Not on yet. Test, test. There we go. If you guys all want to find your seats, we're going to get started here in just a minute. Yep. All right. Thank you all for coming out here tonight and joining us. My name is Clay Counts. I'm the chairman of the Pickens County Republican Club. Tonight, we have a special event. We have candidates for County Council District 3 that are here to take your questions, hopefully share a little bit about what they believe and why they think that they're the right person for the job. I'm part of the Pickens County Republican Club. We have a group here that helps make this possible. We're an auxiliary under the SCGOP. So a group of fellow conservatives that came together and said, hey, let's get a platform to have candidates come, take questions, and have a way to have voters educated. So that's our ultimate goal tonight, is that you get to speak to these fine gentlemen, hear what they believe, and learn something about them. I'm going to get us started with a word of prayer. Dear Heavenly Father, God, thank you for allowing us to come here today and join as free citizens of the United States, where we don't have fear of oppression or someone coming after us because we want to share our ideas and thoughts. God, thank you for the blessings that you provided us as we come together here and gather as citizens to elect the next person for County Council District 3. God, be with us through this time. Allow us to have wisdom and select the right person for the job and honor you through our actions. It's through Jesus I pray. Amen. All right, and if you can stand, please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. And as a Republican club, we always feel it appropriate to read the Republican creed. So I'm going to hand it off to our Vice Chairman, Rick Tate, who's going to read our creed for us.
I do not choose to be a common man. It is my right to be uncommon. If I can seek opportunity, not security, I want to take the calculated risk to dream and build, to fail and to succeed. I refuse to barter incentive for dole. I prefer the challenges of life to guaranteed security, the thrill of fulfillment to the stale calm of utopia. I will not trade freedom for beneficence, nor my dignity for a handout. I will never cower before any master save my God. It is my heritage to stand erect, proud, and unafraid, to think and act for myself, enjoy the benefit of my creations, to face the whole world boldly and say, I am a free American. And I hope those are the principles that binds us together in this room. I hope those are the principles of any of our elected officials and candidates take to office with them. Now, I'd like to recognize any of the elected officials or candidates we have in the room. Tommy, if you'd say hello to the folks. Candidate for Sheriff, Tommy Blankenship. Current Vice Chairman of the Pickens County Council and candidate, Roy Costner. Anybody else? And just on a personal note, I'd like to thank Bonnie, who is our timekeeper back here. She brings the food and the water and the cookies, all of these things, and we couldn't do this without Bonnie. And the fellow with looks like he's getting ready to handle a NASA blast off back there is John Schaefer. He is our IT guy, and we have been doing this together for about 12 years. So we enjoy doing it, and hope you guys get something out of it. And we'd like to thank the Chief of Police for being here with us too, and for Pickens.
Alley winner, Pickens City Council.
Pickens City Council. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm not that familiar with Pickens. That's right. Thank you for being here. And Elliot Kelly is with us tonight, who used to do the job that I'm about to do and walk around through the audience with the microphone. So when you want to ask a question, just raise your hand and I'll come to you once we get. And if you would, just introduce yourself. And if you know, tell us what precinct you live in. Thanks.
Wonderful. Thank you, Rick. So a couple of points I'll make you guys aware of. Restrooms are in the back through that door right there. As Rick mentioned, we have water and refreshments over here. Also have a donation basket that goes towards the club, reserving venues, things of that nature. I do want to make it known both of these candidates did pay for this venue, so they are very interested in you being able to hear from them. So I thank both of them for doing that. Also want to add, we have a sign-up sheet in the back for our mailing list. It's there on the back. Promise not to spam you. Only a few emails a month at the most. So we'll let you know when we're having events like these if you would like to come and attend. So with that being said, I think it's time to get started. We have current Councilman Alex Seda and challenger of that position, Mr. Justin Durham, here with us tonight. The rules are going to be as follows. Questions will come from the crowd. You guys can ask anything you like with two caveats. Please be on topic. There's national races, all kinds of things going on. So please keep it relevant to this particular race and be civil and be respectful. I know both of these gentlemen have offered themselves to serve, which is a big sacrifice of their time, money, and efforts. So I ask that you, even if you disagree with their points, be respectful, ask your question, and then pass it on. No back and forth between the crowd and the candidates, and then allow them to answer. So having said that, we'll have a 3-minute introductory statement from each candidate. They'll ask questions will come from the crowd. They'll have 3 minutes to respond. We'll take turns going back and forth, and then we'll have a 2-minute closing statement. So with that said, I think you guys are both aware, timekeepers in the back with our cards. We will get started. Thank you. All right. Ready to roll? Let's do it. I think Justin's going to kick us off. Timekeepers ready? Great. Thank you.
That's my son right over there. I'm Justin Durham, running for county council, almost lifelong Pickens County resident. I'm also a United States Army veteran, moved back here in 2014 after serving in the Army and moved back to Pickens County, had the opportunity to build a house on a piece of what used to be family land. So I have been here for a long time and care about Pickens County, care about everything that's going on and what we're going to leave to our children. I appreciate everybody being here. I appreciate Alex, you coming out and doing this tonight. Appreciate the Pickens County Republican Club for doing this as well. The reason that I'm running for, the reason we're running for county council. Am I correct? Introduce.
You can use that this time.
Okay,
how you
gotcha,
you can talk about that yourself.
So the reason that I'm running for county council, I feel like we need to fix our roads. We need to get an increase. We need to increase pay and retention for our first responders. I understand it goes across the board for our county employees, but I'd like to take a place to start. And one of those, and the place that I would start when we're increasing pay and retention is among our first responders. I've been in business for a long time. I got my bachelor's degree from Anderson University and got my master's degree from Clemson. I've been in workforce development now for the past 9 years. And the one thing that I've seen in workforce development is that you need to have a plan. You need to be able to move things forward. You can't work on everything at once. You have to be able to take things in segments and say, you know what, we're going to start here and then we're going to move on and continue to work across the board. So that's the approach that I'll bring to county council if I'm elected. I will do my best to work with people wherever I can. I have a core set of values. I'm a Christian conservative. I make no bones about that. I fit the stereotype of a Southern Baptist, right? However, I do believe that if you can work with somebody, you should do it. There are issues that come before county council all the time that transcend Republican and Democrat. And I think a lot of times in our society, we have gotten away from that, from the understanding that you can work together on some issues while you still stick to your core principles and you just won't budge on those issues. So that's where I would bring something to county council that I feel like we need, and that is bringing a consensus to the table, putting conservative principles before the council, and trying to pull, trying to get those things in place for our county for the betterment of all of our residents.
I'm going to actually stand up. I'm running on 5 things. The first thing I'm running on is there's too much growth. I want to preserve our small town, the wildlife. I want to preserve the scenic beauty. Communication. I'm just not a jack-in-the-box politician who just shows up every 4 years when he wants your vote. I actually communicate throughout the 4 years. I question power, speak truth to power, and I'm not afraid to stand up. We also need to build another EMS station. We haven't built one in 12 years. True inflation the last 3 years has been up 30%. Average wages are up about 10%. So your purchasing power has fallen behind 20%. Everybody, we need to raise pay for employees. And the final thing is, I'm a fiscal conservative. I got the track record to prove it. I've never voted for a property tax increase. The government has plenty of money. They just need to better manage it. Now, folks, there's no Democratic Party in Pickens County. So the moderates and the liberals and the conservatives all run in the Republican primary. You need to be skeptical. Now, if they say they're fiscal conservative, they need to be doing 5 things, 5 principles. 1, setting priorities. Not everything's a number 1 priority. 2, do they live within their means? If revenue's this, they better not be spending this. Spend this or this. They need to also avoid borrowing and put you into more debt because interest buys you nothing. Tax increases are a last resort. Save money for a rainy day. Because I can tell you, all the county councilmen 4 years ago ran on being fiscal conservatives. The millage rate today is 90 mils. It was 57 mils then. So you have to be very skeptical. That happened in 2 votes. 5-1 vote, 4-2 votes. I voted no on them. It's not that they're liars. They just don't have the financial skill set. And what happens is they defer to unelected, unaccountable to the public administrators. That's the problem there. Now, finally, and Justin, I'm going to bring this out because he said some things during the campaign so far, and I want to clear the air on him. One of these things he said is the current councilman has failed to accomplish anything in 4 years. He also said Alex's political track record is living proof he's not concerned with results. He wants to be a rhetoric guy. He said no solution plus no results equals non-existent leadership. He also called me a no. I vote no on every issue. Alex is a District 3's rubber stamp no vote. Now I'm going to be pretty pointed tonight. Now, one of the questions I have for him is this first responder pay plan. How much is it going to cost? Let's put some dollar numbers on these promises. Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. So we will start off now with questions. If you have one of our people in the crowd has a question, raise your hand, and gentleman in the back will come to you.
I'm right here. Just introduce yourself. Tell us what precinct you're in if you don't mind.
I'm Cheryl Johnson. I'm in Precinct 3. I have a couple of questions. One is I want to know how you feel about the trans show that's occurring down here at the Hampton House, and does the council have a position on that?
Does council have a position? I'm going first. Yeah. Does council have a position on that? Well, I can't speak for council as a whole. I can speak for myself. I'm opposed to it. It's cut and dry. I'm opposed to that type of thing happening. We've said for years that those types of things happen, in California and New York and other places, but thankfully they don't happen on our own doorstep. Well, unfortunately, they're starting to happen on our own doorstep. The unfortunate part of all this is I'm not sure that from a legal standpoint, there's anything that the county or the city can do. It's private property. So is it something that I support? Absolutely not. Am I going to support that business? Absolutely not. But, at the same time, we also have to look at what are the legalities. I'm not sure that that's something that the city or the county can do anything about.
Just how you feel is what I want to know.
That's how I feel.
We control what goes on in the county, not the city. So if the city was going to create an ordinance like a zoning, or the city was going to deny a business license, that's their thing. We can't do that. But I can give you my personal opinion. I've written about the trans lifestyle for probably 7, 8 years since Bruce Jenner first came out, and everybody embraced this. Consenting adults, they want to do what they want in the bedroom. That's fine. I don't have any problems with that. But the acceptance of this lifestyle is dangerous. You look at the facts. Trans adults, 42% attempt suicide. The rest of us, 0.6%. It's a dangerous lifestyle to be pushing on anybody, let alone children. And that's going on in all sorts of shapes and forms. Hollywood and the media is an enemy of your child. And they've been that way for decades. All you have to do is look at what they're marketing and selling. 4-letter words, party 24/7, promiscuous sex with no consequences, glamorizing gambling shows, Netflix shows about suicide and glamorizing that. One of the adults going to stand up in the room and say, this is crazy. These are adult issues and adult questions that we should not be throwing at children. They are not emotionally and psychologically developed enough to feel them like an adult. So that a lot of them are going to fumble. I mean, the biggest issue I had when I was a kid, do I smoke that cigarette or not? Now the biggest issue, a fundamental issue, the most confusing question, are you a boy or a girl? This is insane. It's like having a baby bird. You're nurturing and trying to get it to grow. And you throw it out in a Category 5 hurricane. So I'll tell you, folks, if we don't clean up the culture, these kids are our future. We're in decline, and the decline is going to accelerate. We're growing into it. Because the morals and values of the silent generation, Depression, World War II, they're dying off, and they're being replaced with this. And it's being created by the media in Hollywood. It's dangerous. I oppose it.
So this is kind of a two-part question, but the first is for Mr. Durham. On your social media campaign page, I've noticed that you repeatedly state that Mr. Seda votes no the majority of the time. You even went as far as stating he voted against FN America until the final vote. This simply is not true. He voted yes on all three of those votes. I confirmed it by reading the minutes, and I've attended many council meetings and reviewed minutes from over the years, and I just respectfully disagree with that stance that you take. So can you please explain why you feel he votes in opposition the majority of the time? And then for Mr. Seda, can he explain why he votes in opposition some of the time?
So,
Alex, yep. So we were round robin between who goes first. So Alex will actually go first on this one.
Okay, here's the numbers. I track every vote. The last 3 years has been 502 action items. These aren't votes to close the meeting or approve minutes, real action items. 502. Now, I voted no. The no rubber stamp voted no 19% of the time. So 1 out of 5 times I vote no. So the statement just simply isn't true. Now, if you just looked at the minutes, you would see that. I think I'm a healthy skeptic of what's going on there. I mean, I voted no on the largest tax hike in Pickens County history by the county council, 10 mils. It wasn't necessary. They had $23 million in savings. They had another $24 million in COVID money in the bank. Revenue was growing 8 to 10%. I voted no when the county council did little to nothing to protect Scenic Highway 11. They allowed new manufacturing, new commercial, new subdivisions all along the highway. I voted no to that. I presented an alternative, got 1 vote. I voted no on raising the county administrator's pay from $168,000 to $214,000 when his managers are making $85,000. I thought it was excessive. If sometimes you need to vote no, look at Easley. Nobody voted no. They approved 21, they annexed 21 subdivisions in 4 years. That city is a mess. They needed somebody voting no and telling them telling the public the rest of the story. It wouldn't have gone as far. Now, some of the other councilmen, when you look at their voting record, they vote yes 99% of the time. Now, they're not yes rubber stamps in his book. See, I thought that was unfair. Thank you.
Well, here's the deal. I'm not running against the other county councilman, so I don't have anything to go at against them. I'm running against Mr. Sada. Maybe the reason why it seems like you vote no all the time is because there's been very little accomplished in District 3. In fact, I don't think, to my recollection, and I've been looking back on the meeting minutes, Sada opposed comes up more often than not. And, so again, the reason why it seems like my opponent votes no all the time is because he hasn't accomplished anything. When I sit down in front of you 4 years from now, whether I'm running for reelection or not, if I win this race, whether I decide to run for reelection or not, what I want to be able to do is sit down in front of you and say, hey, these are the things that I proposed to the county council. This is the process that we went through to be able to get them approved, and this is what we've got done for the people of Pickens. Now, whenever it comes to my statements that he has voted no consistently, he has voted no consistently. He has voted no against multiple issues. For instance, the 183 project. Why are we voting against fixing a road that's a safety hazard? I drove to work in Greenville for 3 years on Highway 183. I nearly got slammed in the back 2 times on that road in the 3 years that I drove there. That's twice in 3 years that I nearly was involved in a wreck that wasn't of my making because of the potholes and patches on Highway 183. He voted no against it. He didn't want to see it fixed. Whenever I started talking about fixing county roads on my campaign, all of a sudden now he's for fixing county roads. He wants to see them repaved. He wants to talk about what he's done to work with SCDOT. But throughout the 4 years that he's served, he hasn't talked about working with anybody. Whenever it comes to what we're going to get done, another no vote, the C&D landfill. We're spending $1.6 million per year to truck your garbage and mine to Greenville County. We had an opportunity to put a little bit of a capital investment into the current landfill, get it extended by at least 30 years, possibly more, and remove that $1.6 million price tag. I checked with the landfill director, and we put $150,000 into engineering fees and getting a DHEC approval, and then we put $2.2 million into getting some capital into some capital investments in a dozer and I believe it was a shredder that we got to be able to shred some of our larger bulk stuff. So $2.2 million investment that we put into the C&D landfill in order to erase $1.6 million year over year. Now, by my calculation, you're saving money after in the middle of year 2. So yeah, you voted no on that. I'd love to have an explanation on that too. I called you and asked you about it. Yeah, it seems like you vote no quite often because again, we haven't gotten anything done.
Okay, I'm Ken Horbinski. I live out in Pumpkin Town, and my question seems to be as the county's getting older, what are the plans to improve and increase the capability of EMS?
The plans to can you repeat that again? I'm sorry, I couldn't quite hear you.
Capability of EMS.
To increase the capability of EMS. Okay, so first responders have been on my platform from the very beginning. EMS, firefighters, sheriff's office as a whole, we need to reevaluate what we're doing there. As we've grown as a county, we have stretched our first responders thin. And I appreciate all the first responders who are sitting here in the room right now. I appreciate what you do, but they're spread thin right now. What we need to do, we need to look at what our staffing levels are in the EMS. I know that EMS has been brought up, potentially building a new station. I don't have a problem with building a new station, but we need to address the fact that we're having trouble staffing our current EMS stations first. If we spend the money to build a new EMS station in Easley, as my opponent has proposed, and then it sits there empty, we buy trucks to put in that EMS station, and they sit empty and unused, it's not going to do you and I a bit of good. So we need to address the pay issues. We need to address the retention issues. We need to address the ability to be able to bring over first responders from other areas where, they may be working for Greenville County, Anderson County, somewhere like that, to where we can bring them in and have them making equivalent money here in our county where they bring their experience over. If they're a 10-year EMT, they shouldn't be starting from the very bottom like they do now. That's the reason why we're not able to recruit experienced folks. And so, yeah, I think it's a great idea to expand our EMS stations. I think we need that for Pumpkintown, Holly Springs, as well as Dacusville and 6 Mile. Those are rural areas that has a hard time keeping up. If you have a snake bite up there on the trails, you need an EMT fast. You need a paramedic fast. When we had the votes to consolidate the rural fire districts, what we could have done at that particular point in time, here's a solution I would have proposed. We should have hired firefighters who could also be who were also certified as paramedics. That can be done. Greenville County has them. Anderson County has them. Pickens County used to have them, I understand from talking with our emergency managers. Why was it never proposed that, hey, yes, we've got an issue up there where if somebody has a heart attack, we can't get to them fast enough. If somebody has a snake bite, we can't get to them fast enough because we have people covering down here in Easley. Why wasn't it proposed? Why was the solution not put forward to hire someone who would be a dual role? When I worked in Greenville County, we had Greenville County respond to every medical emergency, and most of the time they responded quicker than the EMTs. So that's a solution that could have been proposed but was not. So I completely agree. We do need to bolster our EMS, but before we can bolster our EMS, we can't just have facilities that are built where we spend money on them. We can't have trucks that are invested in. Those trucks are not cheap, that are just going to sit idle, and nobody's going to be able to fill them because we're still paying $13 an hour, and we can't get anybody to work for that.
I'm just wondering where you're getting these figures. I mean, EMS is fully staffed and fine. That was a management issue. We brought in a new manager. She took care of it. That's old news. I voted for both shredders. I don't know what he's talking about. I can prove it. You can look at the minutes. Ask about 183 in the landfill. I'll gladly give you my side on that. Let me tell you the lowdown on EMS. 45% of the calls in EMS come from Easley. They only have 33% of the station. So what happens is when the EMS and Easley's, those three units are out in Greenville waiting on a bed or on a call, Dacusville has to shift down to Easley. Pickens has to shift towards Easley. Holly Springs comes down towards Pickens. There's a call on Highway 11. It's a 30-minute delay. So this shifting around that has to occur because there's shortages in Easley and Central creates response times higher in the northern part of the county, which is my concern. So what I want to do is, and I've really pressed this, is to try to build some new stations. And the most pressing problem before that, believe it or not, is Medic 1. The Pickens unit, EMS, used to be behind the library. It used to be behind the library in Pickens. It had sewer problems. It was a steel building. They had to shut it down. They moved Medic 1 temporarily up to Fox Squirrel Ridge, that fire station, but that's a temporary home. They need a new station there. So we need a new station in Norris, which is on the drawing board, which is combining with a fire station, building that out, building one in Easley, and a new Medic 1. Now, how are you going to pay for it? Remember, that's the question. County's got $29 million in savings. And when you look at that savings and how it's accumulated, $3.9 million of that has been due to police, fire, and EMS. Some of that can be used for EMS, I believe, with no problem. Each one of those stations is about $900,000. No problem to do that. The bigger picture is I think EMS needs to be a funding priority going forward the next 2 or 3 years. The past 8 years, the average department has gone up about, well, let's see, 8 years total, it's been about 64% the average department. Fire's spending and budget grew by 239%. The police grew by 81%, plus the jail of $29 million. Now, trust me, I support all our first responders. Police and fire have had their turn. It's now EMS's turn. They've grown an average, well, not an average. Over that period of time, they grew 65%, which was the average of other departments. Police is close to 90%. Fire's 238%. That's why I keep saying they need to be made a priority. That's it.
Certainly. Hi, I'm Melanie Sinikowski, and I live in Pumpkintown Precinct. And I'm sorry, I got a little closer. my question for both of you candidates, firstly, Mr. Seda, is your position on preserving Route 11? And if so, how would you go about doing that? Thank you.
Come on. Okay, in a 5-1 vote last year, County Council voted to do little or nothing to protect Highway 11. It's a scenic highway. Their plan allows new manufacturing, new commercial, new subdivisions all along the highway. It controls the look of things. So the dollar stores are going to come. They're just going to have to look like a tree. The plan allows light manufacturing all along the highway, up to 200,000 square feet allowed on a scenic highway. Storage warehouses, carpet manufacturers. Nobody wants that up there. How could I vote for that? I was the one vote that voted no, of course, right? I just did my research up there. I sent out letters. I solicited input. I did it on Facebook. I knocked doors. And what people wanted up there was no new manufacturing, no new commercial, no new subdivisions. And most told me that they were okay with giving up their property rights to industrialize or commercialize their property as long as everyone else had the same rules and their neighbor couldn't sell out to QT or their neighbor couldn't sell out to Dollar General. That's their fear. That's why they're okay with giving up their rights. I was okay with them giving up their rights because they were okay with it to protect the highway. If they had said the opposite, I would have said the opposite. They told me. And so I adopted a plan that they told me, which was plus or minus 1,000 feet on the highway from the center line, no new commercial, no new manufacturing, no new subdivisions. Individual homes, no restrictions, grandfather existing structures. That was my plan. Now, I'm going to go back to him again. He got on Pickens Local. Him and I got basically the same plan. He said he didn't want industrial there, chain stores, large subdivisions, apartment complexes. The difference is he calls my plan an infringement on people's rights, but his plan is not. Now, I want to explain how you're going to protect Highway 11 without restricting people's rights. Because he went a step further on his website and he said, we'll only allow commercial, residential, and industrial zones. And that's what we'll do, which is zoning, which is an infringement on rights. So it's just, you can't have it both ways, folks. You can't sit there and say, we're going to protect the highway and we're going to put restrictions on rights of owners, but then at the same time tell people we're not going to restrict your rights. I'm open with people, and why I was open with them. They told me no new commercial, no new manufacturing, no new subdivisions. Where do I sign? Now, they're giving up their rights, and the government would do that. They wanted it, though. That's the difference. Now, I can't see how you could do both.
So Highway 11, yeah, hot topic in 2022, and I followed each one of those meetings. I agree with my opponent. Nobody wants heavy industrial, light industrial, apartment complexes. Residential developers coming in there, knocking down acres and acres of trees, and putting a Ryan Homes right in front of Table Rock. Completely agree there. When it comes to property rights, though, my opponent keeps saying you can build anything up there as long as it doesn't look like or as long as it looks like a tree. What do you have to do to get your property there not to look like a tree? I spoke with, or to look like a tree. I'm sorry. I spoke with a couple of people up there in the area, and I've spoke with multiple people in the Pumpkin Town area who are highly upset about what my opponent said in October 2022 about people's personal property rights and what they could or could not do on their property. You have to get certain in order to build a house now in that 1,000 feet of protected space. You now have to get approvals to be able to do that. Those approvals cost money. The cost of living is already going up. And again, you just have to make it look like a tree, but you have to get the state to sign off on it. Whenever it comes to the vast majority of the people wanted these restrictions and wanted the government to take away their personal property rights. I heard that said multiple times too. Again, I listened to each one of those comment sessions. I was either there or I was listening to them on YouTube. I counted up roughly how many people we were looking at who spoke for and against, and it was about a 50-50 split every time of people who said, hey, yeah, I'm perfectly okay with Mr. Seda and the rest of the county council taking away my rights to be able to do what I want to do on my property. And then the other half of them saying, hey, we've owned this property for years. We want to pass it down to our kids. We want them to be able to build on it. I don't want you to take away my right to be able to do that. So it was not the vast majority of people up on Highway 11 who had decided that they wanted this done. And I can tell you right now, from the outreach that my campaigners received from the Pumpkintown area, there's a large group up there who are highly agitated about all of this. Zones restricting rights. Look, I get it. Whenever it comes down to what we want to do from a development plan, we need to put a plan in place. We have certain areas in the county that are better suited for manufacturing. Highway 11 is not one of those areas. Therefore, I would keep the restrictions on Highway 11 to not be able to put manufacturing in that area. But if you want to put a house on your property, I don't think you should have to go prove to the state that it's going to look like a tree in order to build on your property. That's your property. You own it. So I make a delineation there between corporations, residential developers, big developers, and the individual who has 10 acres of property and wants to split that property up among their kids and have their kids be able to build there without it being a financial hardship on them to build.
Next questions? Oh, okay.
So I'm Dina Christophic, and I live in Pumpkintown. I have a farm out there, so I don't know all the details about property rights, and the voting I followed a little bit. Certainly, I know our current councilman never came and asked me how I felt about property rights, but I think it kind of moved on from there from Highway 11, and I'm pretty sure I was at a council meeting where it went one step further when our current councilman voted no. And that issue was related to being able to put smaller homes and RVs, which essentially what he was looking for is if I had wanted to put an RV to live in for my kids or a smaller home for my kids on my farm, what he was proposing would prevent that from happening. So that kind of went a little bit step further beyond Highway 11. So I'd like to know where really each one of you stand with property rights, irregardless of Highway 11.
So your question was, how do we feel on property rights regardless of Highway 11? I'm a conservative. I'm a constitutional conservative. If I recall correctly, I'm a bit of a history buff. One of the reasons why we went to war with Great Britain back in 1776 was because the king wanted to board his soldiers on personal property. And we didn't like that very much. I don't like someone in the government, whether it's the county council, whether it's the city council, whether it's the state or the federal government, coming to me and telling me you can do this and you can't do this with your property. I know several people who have done this. It costs a good bit of money to build a house, right? If you buy a piece of property and you want to be able to build a house on that property, you have a couple of options, right? You can either, if you don't have an existing house, you have a couple of options. You can either rent a home, or a lot of times if you have a camper, you put that camper up on the property that you're building on, and you live in there for 6 months, 9 months, a year, however long it takes to build that home. I don't have a problem with that at all. If you want to put a camper on your property and live in that camper, as long as you are not infringing on someone else's property rights. Now, property rights, let me clarify this. My liberty ends where your liberty begins, right? I spoke with a man at one of the earlier council meetings when all this was taking place, and we were talking about conservative development. There was a gentleman from Easley. He lives behind Walmart, and he showed me a picture of his backyard. You could tell, he was showing me before and after pictures. You could tell his backyard was beautifully curated, okay? A developer came through, wiped out all the tree line, wiped out everything, and cut, the way they cut things, it washed mud into his beautifully curated backyard. That's not protecting somebody's property rights. And if you or I, if you were my neighbor and I started pushing mud into your backyard, that's not my property rights. Okay. So again, we've got to have some common sense about this thing. We've got to understand that if what I want to do, if what makes me happy on my property is going to be unsafe for you or is going to ruin your property, that's not protected under personal property rights. But if what I'm doing doesn't affect you, I don't care if you want to live in a single wide, a double wide, an RV, or a mansion that cost a $1.5 million. Doesn't matter to me. It's your property. If you've got the money for it, you do with it what you want to do with it. So yes, I am very much for protecting personal property rights. And I think that we can find a middle ground where we do that, where we protect the individual people, who own this property, the individuals, not the corporations. We can put UDSO standards in place that are going to make Ryan Holmes and D.R. Horton not want to buy another acre of property in Pickens County. Require crawl space. It's pretty simple. Their business model doesn't curate well to that. So yeah, I mean, I'm a property rights guy. I'm not ashamed of that. If you're upset that I'm a conservative who believes in property rights, then I would say you probably shouldn't vote for me.
Okay. This is where I'm having a problem. To say you're for property rights and then propose property rights is basically I can do what I want, what I see fit with my property, with no restriction. That's what the definition is. Now, he proposed zoning, which is you can build this here, but you can't build that there. He's proposed all sorts of restrictions on Highway 11, which I agree with, by the way. He doesn't call that a restriction on property rights. Then he says you have to have a crawl space. You can't build a house on a slab. That's all an infringement on the owner's rights of the property. And then he'll sound for property rights. You got to look through that, okay? The plan that he's criticizing is the existing Highway 11 plan that controls the look of things. I did not vote for it because of that, one of that very reasons. It controls the look of things. My plan was real simple, plus or minus 1,000 feet on the center line. No new manufacturing, no new commercial, no new subdivisions, your individual house, build what you want. That was the plan. The state doesn't regulate this. The county regulates it. You don't have to go to the state. Okay, I'm going to try to answer your question about the RVs. I support RVs. When you want to take an RV to a camp, stay in it temporarily, no problem. That's what they're built for. You want to build a house, you want to live in an RV for a while, I support that. Now, what I don't support is RVs becoming a permanent resident, which is not legal. It's not legal in Anderson. It's not legal in Oconee. It's not legal in Greenville. It's not legal in Spartanburg. Now, these guys have talked about making it legal here, and I opposed it, and I gave my reasons. Definition of an RV: a motorized camper, a converted bus, a tent trailer, any portable structure designed for temporary housing. This stuff will all become permanent homes. Do you want to live next to a tent trailer in your neighborhood? Just think about how this can go wrong. Neighbor's house burns down, he collects the check, he puts a fifth wheel RV on there. You're going to complain. There's nothing you can do about it. It'd be legal at that point with the proposal that was out there. The neighbor wants to make some extra money, cuts out a piece of land in his back, pulls an RV up there, rents it to God knows who. If you're complaining, can't do a darn thing about it. They're legal at that point. Now, if you talk to law enforcement, they will caution you against making RVs a permanent residence as a bad idea. Recreational vehicles are not up to code for homes. They're not modular homes. They're not mobile homes. They're not regular stick-built homes. Banks will never lend on them because they depreciate 20% the first time you drive it off the lot, 40% in 5 years. The idea that somebody's going to go from a shelter to a bank, get a loan, and buy an RV and live in it is ridiculous. They're going to be rentals. They're going to be very easy to drive onto a property, set up, generate income, and they're going to be all over the place like the mobile home parks were years ago.
Time.
That's what I fear. Thank you.
All righty. Introduce yourself. Hello.
Hi there, Allie Winter. I believe that it's very important for our elected officials to be focused on their elected position or job and not seeking higher elected office. Will each of you pledge right now that you will not seek another elected office for the duration of the next 4-year term on council?
Me? Okay. I ran for the school board 4 times. I was elected 3 times. Everyone criticized me as he was a climber. He's doing it to run for higher office. Every time I just ran for the school board. That was it. Instead of running for the state house, which I had no desire to do, I ran for county council, which is actually a step down. When you look at the budget of the school district, it's about $200 million. They got about 2,000 employees. County government has about 700 employees, and their budget's about 1/4 the size. So in that sense, in terms of size and scope, going from school board down to county council was actually a step down. So there's no evidence in my history, and I'm telling you straightforward, I have no desire to run for higher office.
The question was, will you run for higher office in the middle of county council? No, absolutely not. I don't want to move out of Pickens. I have no desire to be in Columbia. I have no desire to be in D.C. I don't see that changing. Pickens is my home. This is where I enjoy living. I can serve Pickens while also serving on the county council, and so that's what I plan to do. If the people of Pickens are gracious enough to elect me, I plan on serving the people of Pickens County. I know you can. I'm not taking anything away from any of our elected officials who are serving in the state or in the federal government. Just not my cup of tea. No, I don't plan on running for anything else in the middle of my 4-year term. I would like to, since I've got some time, I would like to kind of circle back on some of those personal property rights. I never said it was a great idea to live in an RV, but there are lots of things that may not be a great idea that aren't going to hurt anybody. Okay. Again, it's about your right as an American citizen to do what you want to do without somebody in the government coming to you and saying, "Hey, that's not a great idea. You shouldn't be doing that." That's not built to the point that you would be able to live in that long term. The people have said the same thing about single wides and double wides. What my concern is, I'm not getting too hung up on the RV parks. I feel like there are ways that we can take care of that. So I'm not getting too hung up on RVs. What I am concerned about is where is the price of housing going in Pickens County? I've got 3 kids sitting right over there. One of them's 10, one of them's 8, one of them's 4. When I purchased my house, I'll be very candid with you, it was less than $150,000. Now my house would go on the market for somewhere around $285,000, and I live in a modular home. It's fine with me. It's what I could afford at the time. My kids, working on the same salary that I had at the time that I bought my home, could not purchase the same type of that home without paying $285,000 for it, paying double the mortgage almost that I'm paying right now. So where are we putting, if we start putting all these restrictions in place that you have to do this, you have to get this approved, you have to pay this fee to make it look like a tree, where are we leading down the road to our kids being able to have affordable housing? What we're giving them is a county where they're just not going to be able to live. So you're going to end up having the kids who live here, the kids who want to work a manufacturing job, maybe they're a dual income family, they're working in a manufacturing plant and they're dressing hair or waiting tables or something like that. How are they going to be able to afford a $300,000 plus home? It's just not going to happen. So that's whenever I look at property rights, restricting personal property rights, you're telling people this is what you can and can't put on your property. And you may be pricing them out of ever being able to live in Pickens County, and I don't want that at all.
Johnny O. Rains. I live in District 2, but what you guys do affects me, so I'm here to see what you guys have in store for us. Right now, my biggest concern is the library. I think you all know what's going on at the library. There's pervasive vulgar materials available for minor children, and this county council continues to allow the public library to have its own personal property tax rate, their own millage. It's kind of like what Kathleen said, the gift that keeps on giving. And you have expressed, Alex, your concerns. Justin, and you have too, by both of you signing the petition that we were circulating. So I know you're aware of the concerns, how the library is what I would call grooming children. I want to know if either one of you are for taking them off the millage, because I feel like that's a step that needs to be made.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I am concerned. I'll put it that. I agree that I'm concerned with what's going on with the library system and what they're allowing to be put in front of our kids. I do believe that parents need to parent, and I've heard that argument as well. I believe that parents need to be able to parent. But I do believe that if you are a government entity and you are putting things before the public, you have a certain amount of responsibility there yourself. My opponent, I agree with him whenever he talked about where our society is going. My wife and I have discussed this multiple times. The sad state of where we're at right now, the things that are completely acceptable that were not acceptable 10, 15, 20 years ago. I don't agree with it at all. Again, I fit the stereotype of your typical Southern Baptist man. When it comes to the millage rate, I'd have to look more into that. And I'm just going to be very honest with you. That's not something that I have decided how I would vote if I got onto county council. I think there are merits to potentially looking at revoking that. I think not just from a moral standpoint like your argument is here, but also if they're coming in with a good bit of extra money at the end of every year that they get to keep, and other departments and offices within our county don't have that same advantage, then I would want to look at, okay, how could we maybe reallocate some of that money that they're pocketing at the end of the day and put it towards other areas of the county. So again, I haven't got an answer for you right now as to how I would do that. I would want to get into the discussions, talk with the people who know, talk with the experts, listen to all sides of the argument, and then decide from there how I would vote on whether or not we remove the millage. But again, I signed your petition and I did it happily. I remember back in 2018, I believe it was, that the chief marketing officer of Disney said that they were going to intentionally start putting LGBTQ plus characters into each one of their productions because they wanted to normalize it for the next generation. And I'm going to be very honest with everybody sitting here right now, anybody who's watching it, I'm not for that. I'm not for it. I believe the Bible says it's not right. It's not natural. That's my position on it. And if I had the opportunity to appoint somebody to the library board in my term on county council, I would be looking to appoint somebody similar to how presidents do when they appoint somebody to the Supreme Court. They want somebody who identifies with their values. I'd be looking to appoint somebody who identifies with my values as well.
Okay, there's two issues there. One is the funding issue of the library, millage versus a flat budget. A millage allows them their own tax rate. Most old departments don't have that, their own special tax rate. They also get, as a result, they have their own savings account. The library has amassed about $4 million in money for its own account. Now, when the sheriff has a budget of $17 million and he spends $16 million, he doesn't get to keep that $1 million. And they've saved a lot. You've made that point. Now, when the library spends $4 million, but their revenue is $4.2 million, they get to keep that. Now, is the library more important than the sheriff's department? I'd say public safety is more important. So if the library is going to have a Cadillac system, they surely should. In reality, it would be chaos if every department had its own tax rate. So the library needs to be like everybody else and come off a millage. Now back to the books. This is going to end up in court. The facts of this case are being created right now. And you have to make sure that you're on the right side of the facts and the right side of the law when this comes down to it. The library board acquires the books, not the county council, not the director. The county council went to remove books, they'd be sued, they'd lose in court in a minute. The law is very clear. Now, when the library board was asleep and the director was selecting the books, that wasn't right either. The library board could pass a policy tomorrow and say, no more vulgarity in our catalog. They could do it. If the library chairman directed it and implemented it, they could write her up a terminator. Now, my role is limited. I appoint one of the library board members. Pastor Danny Parton is my appointee, and I'm very satisfied with him. He's doing a good job. Books are removed from the library all the time. It's very legal. Books get old, new editions come out, they go in a new direction. It's perfectly legal. The state gives them the law to do the power to do that. Libraries are governed by the state and local government. There's no federal library laws. You'll end up in federal court, though, if you discriminate when you make a decision. If you remove a book because it's great for racial reasons, political reasons, religious reasons, you just personally don't like it. You got to be an objective judge when you're up there. The court's going to overrule you and put the book right back. Now, you can remove books from a library because they're vulgar, because they're not age appropriate, not educationally suitable. Stephen Pico versus School District of Island Trees, 1982 is the landmark case on that. Folks, I'm not afraid to remove books from the library. I was on the library board. I was on the school board and we removed the book. You can Google it. Plenty of books. One of them was Fat Kid Rules the World. Google that and Alex Sater, you'll see we did it. I'm not afraid to do it. I just can't do it under the law. So that's the problem. We got to defer to the library board and let them make those decisions.
Anybody, since you asked one, is there anybody else has a question? Oh, let me get him and I'll come to you.
This question is about real estate again and zone. I'm Bo Grant. I'm in Pumpkin Town District. I'm a property owner on Laurel Ridge Drive, and we're affected by the 1,000-foot setback and all the discussions and town hall meetings related to South Carolina 11. I just have some questions, and I'd like you guys to kind of bounce some ideas off of each one of these cases that have popped up over the last 4 years. We have a street side marina right off of 11 with multiple yachts rotting on the side of the road. No code enforcement after multiple attempts. Saluda Hill has been clear cut, roughly 1,100 acres. When mud slides into somebody's property from uphill, I'm a commercial real estate broker since 1994. We have a legal principle called support. If somebody uphill of you allows that to happen to you, you can sue the you-know-what out of them, get them to fix it. I haven't seen any erosion detention around that clear cut at all. And I went and looked it up. There is no permitting to allow the clear cut. Nothing. So if people are so concerned about 11, what happened there? Sorry. The biker church. On what planet can we not have a biker church on that stretch of road? Motorcycles come up there. A big part of our tourism is motorcycling. Well, everybody wants a motorcycle. People around here love Harleys and their Chihuahua on a bike. Come on. And what, we're not going to allow a biker church? The county didn't allow it. I don't know why. I lost that story. It was ridiculous, though. Aunt Sue, Teresa and Ed want to put some RVs out there in that nice green field. Why not? What was the holdup there? They're not going to hurt anybody. It'll draw tourism to the district. It's a good thing for their business. It's not going to harm me. I'm across the street. The neighbor in my neighborhood on Laurel Ridge bought 25 acres to build 5 houses on in future, not like right away, but for his family members. He's an architect from Miami. He does medical offices. He's a renowned architect. He's got plenty of, capital to do all this. It won't end up being some weird bad thing. My neighborhood has 2-acre lots in general. I have 6. The way this went down, I'm not ever going to be able to build on the other 4 acres on my lot, on my property. This guy's only being allowed, and it's totally arbitrary. And guess what, taxpayers? We get to pay for the lawsuit. He's only going to be allowed to put up 1 house on 25 acres unless he renovates the entire frontage around Laurel Ridge Drive. And the guy was going to put in a driveway into his property to access those other 4 lots. Now we're talking a density of 5 acres per house. Now I'm almost done. And by the way, he's just outside of the 1,000 feet, so it didn't apply. So yeah, that was right at the end of my list. There you go. Thanks.
Thank you.
All right. You said like 10 different things. All right, 5 things. Okay. The biker church, like I said, I didn't vote for the plan that's up there now. The biker church, the best I can tell, they can build on that property. I don't know what's holding it up. There's no restriction on commercial. That would be a commercial property. It just has to be 150 feet back, which is nothing. Aunt Sue's first building is 150 feet back. So I don't know what the holdup is there. I don't know why. They may have just decided not to build it. Now, is it not deep enough? And they could probably go for a variance. But I don't know. We don't know that. They could always apply for a variance and probably get it. Right? Now, I don't see them doing that. I don't think that they haven't made any attempt, at least as far as I can see in planning. Now, the RV park's the same thing. There's no restriction against that RV park under the current thing. Under my plan, it would be. You can get on me for that. But, there's no restriction. I don't know why it's not happening. I would imagine it would be suicidal at that intersection with 50-foot RVs coming out there the way they have it now. The other problem is you just can't pick and choose who you want to come up there. You can't say franchises no, but mom and pop yes. I mean, that's illegal. You can't do that. So, I mean, the rest of your question was what? Again, there's no restrictions on that under the current ordinance. There weren't even under my ordinance. There wouldn't have been because my ordinance was more than people that would have passed. So you couldn't even have gone that step further. So there's no restriction. Yeah, enforcement. Trust me, people have called me about enforcement issues all the time. Whether it's grass that's too high or junk vehicles, junk on property, and I got to tell you, the ordinance is weak. The enforcement is so. The courts are weaker in enforcing that. I've seen it. I've lived it. That has to change. We have to beef up code enforcement. I mean, does that cover all of it? You think? Okay. Like I said, I don't know why that would be. Like I said, you're talking about the current ordinance. I don't see why that would be a restriction in their current ordinance.
Just for now, and the county's going to have to pay.
It's a 25-acre lot. He's within the 1,000 feet that they have in that, or just total? I have no idea. That doesn't compute to me. It doesn't seem reasonable. Okay.
Yeah, I'll start off where I guess I'll start off from the end there. The 25 acre lot with the ability to only build one home. I would have to look into that and try to figure out, was there a special circumstance, what was going on. But again, in general, I want individuals to be able to do what they want to do on their property. Junkyard code enforcement, street side marina, I think is what you called it. Okay, gotcha. So it's made it that far. It's famous. Look, if we have codes in place right now that say, hey, you can't have 10 junkers sitting on your, sitting on the side of the road, then those codes can be enforced. Okay, I'm not for passing many more codes, depending on what those codes might look like. But again, I'm for limited government, smaller government. So I would just need to look at what the current codes are and decide, okay, is this something that the county is lacking on, where we need to kind of step this thing up and get somebody out there to tell them to mow their lawn or clean up their area. Again, my liberty ends where your liberty begins, right? I use that term quite a bit, and you can't look at me and say, oh, well, you don't support personal property rights if you're just not willing to let people do whatever they want to do. Okay. Again, if you're affecting your neighbors, then you got to be held accountable for that. You can't negatively affect your neighbors. You mentioned the mudslides into somebody's property and there was no permitting for the clear cut. I'd want to know who was responsible for getting the permit in place. And why wasn't it put in place? Why was he allowed to just clear cut without a permit? Why, if it's required for me and you, then it should be required for everybody else. Aunt Sue's RV park. Why or why not? From a safety perspective, obviously we need to put safety first. I agree with my opponent on that. But at the same time, if this is something that is going to increase what is currently one of our largest economic assets, which is tourism, as long as it is something that is not affecting its surrounding neighbors in a negative way, I'm not going to go out there and tell Aunt Sue, I'm sorry, because I don't prefer for it to be there, and because there may be a group out here who doesn't prefer for it to be there because they don't want to look at it. You can't do it, even though you've paid for that property and it's yours. Okay, that's my position on it. I believe you said you have 6 acres. You couldn't build on 4 more of those acres. Yeah. Gotcha. Yeah, and I don't agree with that. I just don't. Look, I'm running up on time. But I built on 3/4 of an acre that my grandpa gave me out of his 7.5 acres of property. And I wouldn't have the home that I live in right now, most likely, if I hadn't gotten that head start.
John and Rachel Poland, we live in the Punkintown district. And I've conversed with Mr. Sansa on Seda on Network Neighborhood about his opposing this Highway 11 Heritage Corridor. He loves to say he opposed it. Then he starts with the scare tactics and he goes, "Do you want a Walmart? Do you want a Dollar General? Do you want a QT?" These things are not going to come out there. It's not going to happen in that area. It, it's just the topographical. It doesn't work. We've been managing up there for years. I've lived up there for 25 years. And I think that we've got a grip on how to manage the highway, and we don't see other people coming in and telling us, you can and can't do this with your property. And it is very restrictive on the residential. There's a section in that 617, I think is the ordinance number, section 4. It tells you what color. You have to get an earth color to paint on your house. Well,
What's the question?
the question is, why do you keep saying that you didn't vote for it? And what you won't tell people is you wanted something that was so much more restrictive than what you actually said no to. So going forward, are you part of the push to move this to other parts of the county, which I've read on the county website? You guys want to extend the view shed. You want to bring these regulations to the rest of the county in several areas. And I've spoken with Justin. He's not for this, but you are. And I just want people to know that's what you're standing for.
So you're saying, you're talking about the current ordinance up there I voted against. Now listen, yeah, I did. Now you're citing that. I don't want to control the look of your house. Remember what I said? Listen. Plus plus or minus 1,000 feet. No new commercial, no new industrial, no new subdivisions. Individual homes, do what you want. I've said it 100 times. Well, that's the plan that's in place. I didn't vote for it. Mine was an alternate list. Rick, this guy keeps coming off. Let me speak. The plan that I have doesn't do that. I didn't vote for their plan. The problem you're having is with their plan. Now, my plan, you wouldn't have a problem. An individual home, you could do what you want. Now, if you wanted to build a commercial, you would have a problem with my plan. You'd have a problem with industrial. You'd have a problem with its subdivisions, but you wouldn't have a problem with an individual home. Now, with that other plan, it's a lot of regulation. The way they slow the growth is not saying you can't do industrial, commercial. They give you a bunch of regulations to stop it. That's not my plan. My plan is very straightforward. You're not going to build commercial. That's it. It's not going to say you can build commercial. We're going to put 1,000 restrictions on it. So really, you can't build commercial. It's very straightforward. Now, no, never. I'm plus or minus 1,000 feet. I've never supported anything more than that. I've talked about the shoulder of the road 100 times over. A shoulder of the road. When you start to do more than that, I don't think it's what people wanted. I didn't talk to people beyond 100,000. What I basically did is I knocked doors at people on 11. I knocked doors just off of 11. You live off of 11, so I never came to your house. But I did later get your opinion on Facebook. So, that's my sort of take on all that. So was there another point you had there? Yeah, which was not part of my plan. That's a rumor you're hearing. It could be somebody else. Now, I just wanted to share some of the things that I did. I just went out and knocked 166 doors along Highway 11. 99 of those people were home. I talked about my plan. 4 had reservations out of 99. That was it. Now, their reservations were, one cautioned about zoning, the other one wanted restrictions along Highway 11, but not as wide as they are now, which I agreed with them. 1,000 feet was my plan. They said the biker church should be built. On my plan, they wouldn't build it, but under the current plan, they could. And then another person said they should be able to sell it to top dollar for anybody they want. But that was 4 out of 99 that I spoke to. That's the majority, the overwhelming majority that I just keep seeing. That doesn't count the 101 doors I knocked 18 months ago. So I feel pretty confident in that position. I know you and I disagree on that. We've gone back and forth on that. But I feel pretty confident it's the majority position that they want to protect the scenic highway, the shoulder. Now, beyond that, I think you're right. It's excessive.
It's your turn.
I think I've heard him say the word plan more tonight than he said in the past 4 years. I'm glad to know you got a plan for Highway 11. I'd love to know your plans for everything else. I don't remember there being a question there, but I'm going to try to address. So for years, the people up on Highway 11, good, wholesome folks, they've known how to manage their own property. They wanted to pass it down to their kids, their grandkids. And in those public forum sessions throughout 2022, you heard that over and over and over and over again. People would get up there and they'd say, hey, I've this goes back to my grandfather. This goes back to my great grandfather. We've owned this property in my family for 100, 150 years. I don't want to. When I break this property up and hand it to my kids or my grandkids, I don't want them to not be able to put a house on here. And I have, again, a very, very similar story. My granddad had 7.5 acres of property. When he got to the point where he couldn't farm it anymore, he decided to turn it over to his kids and his grandkids. So me and my wife and my kids, we live on 3/4 of an acre of property. If you break that up into 2-acre minimum lots on residents such as yourself, if you don't have enough, you've got 4 kids and you got 6 acres, well, I'm sorry, you're out of luck. I think we're kind of beating a dead horse at this point on the property rights. It's pretty simple. In October 2022, Mr. Seda said in a public forum, I'm not saying something that is untrue. You can go and you can watch the video. He said, I am perfectly fine with taking away people's personal property rights because I believe it's what they want me to do. I'm a conservative. That doesn't register with me. I'm from this area where people are proud of their property rights. They're proud of what they've got. That doesn't register with them. He said over and over and over again, the vast majority of people up on Highway 11 want me to take this away, want me to do this. They're perfectly fine with me taking their property rights away from them. I've talked to multiple people on Highway 11, off of Highway 11, whose property is affected by this 1,000-foot setback, who have said, he never talked to me and I don't want it to happen. I didn't want it to happen. So yeah, I'll be there to protect your personal property rights. Again, I'll say it again. If you don't appreciate that I'm a conservative who believes that you as an individual should be able to do what you want to do with your property and build a single wide or a double wide or a mansion, probably don't want to vote for me because I am the property rights conservative.
I'm going to bring it back to first responders if you don't mind. This is kind of to Alex. Why do you feel like you said fire and law enforcement have had their turn? Why do you feel like they need to take turns when they should all be supported because they work together? And then 2, you say they've had their turn, yet they're still underpaid despite the convenient pay raise during an election year, and they're overworked compared to surrounding counties. So why is your focus EMS if you say they're fully staffed? And what is your plan working with the new sheriff?
So Justin actually answers this one first. Yeah.
Well, first off, I'd like to applaud, what the council did last night to be able to give pay raise to our first responders. There's no ego in this campaign for me. It's not about me being able to stand up here 4 years from now and say, hey, guess what I did? I do think there's more work that needs to be done. I know there's more work that needs to be done. We're talking about 1% step progression increases for our first responders across the board. I pulled the numbers here from Evergreen Solutions. They sent me the information. We're looking at 1% step progression year over year. 1% on $15. $15 an hour is 15 cents an hour. That's not a lot when you've had 30% inflation and you're struggling to put gas in your car and you're struggling to put groceries in your buggy and on your table. So we need to take a much closer look at that. Look, our first responders are the best among us. I'm not taking anything away at all from all the other fine folks who work for our county. I'm not taking anything away from them. I think we need to address the county as a whole. But where we're going to start, if I'm elected to county council, where I'm going to start pushing is going to be in the first responder area. To kind of go back to your question, yeah, I agree that it doesn't have to be all or nothing on EMS. I think that we can look at the sheriff's office. We can address the sheriff's office. We can address the Pickens County Fire Department. We can address the EMS and the rescue. We can address all that at one time, and we can make sure that everybody's brought up to the level that's going to allow us to be able to keep the public safe and to be able to keep response times or get response times low if they're not. Mr. Sada said that I don't know how much it's going to cost. Well, we need to look at how much it's going to cost. I completely agree with that. But we've grown year over year over the past 4 years. Okay. If we don't grow our first responder base with that, and if we don't put the pay rates in place that are going to allow us to be able to attract talent and keep them from just coming on board to get certified and then move on to Greenville County, well, guess what? The one of the most basic responsibilities of county government to keep you safe is not going to be able to be attainable. We're not going to be able to do it. I'm not for raising taxes. Okay. I'm going to say that right now. I'm not for raising taxes, but I do believe there are certain scenarios where we have to take a very hard look at our budget and say, okay, year over year, can we afford to be able to pay our first responders what it's going to take to keep them in their boots, in their spot? And are we going to be able to attract people from Greenville County, Anderson County, Oconee County to be able to come here and make similar wages to what they would have made over there and have a better work-life balance? So yeah, I completely agree. We can focus on the first responders as a whole as opposed to just EMS.
The last 8 years, fire spending has been up 230%. Police spending was up 81%, plus the $29 million jail. EMS has been up 64% of the average. Everybody can't get increases like that every year. It's just the money's not there. I feel it's EMS turns because they haven't had those increases. That's why they need to be a priority. But inflation's killing everybody. All the workers, like I said, they're falling 20% down on purchasing power the last 3 years. The county approved the pay system. It's going to add structure to the county pay system, which I think is good. Everybody on average gets a one-time increase on average of 14%. Not county council, not the county administrator, but everybody else. That was missing in his plan there. Going forward, they get the cost of living increases plus an additional 1% every year for a step. That's what's been added as well. Now, that cost is $3 million. And revenue's strong, and we're able to pay for that without a tax increase. But one additional dollar above that in pay is a tax increase. Now I'm going to talk about his plan. Okay, Justin has said he wants to raise the pay of first responders by $10,000 to $15,000 a year. It's a worthy promise. How much is it going to cost? Is it doable? Okay, how many first responders are there? 350. Police, fire, and EMS. Times 10,000, which is the small side of the range. 3.5 million. Whenever you raise pay, you got to raise retirement. You got to raise Social Security payment by the county. You got to raise Medicare. Now that bumps his plan up to $4.5 million. Like I said, there's only $3 million for extra pay, so right away he's got a tax increase in his plan. The problem he's got with his plan is the other 350 workers get nothing, and they're in complete mutiny. So your choice is to either back off on your pledge or give them a raise. That's $9 million. You only got $3 million. That's $6 million you got to come up with to make everybody happy. That's an $8 million tax increase. Now, you could say you're not for tax increases and make these promises and not know the numbers. But when you get in office, you're going to have a surprise tax increase. That's what's going to kind of happen there. The current council, like I said, raised property taxes from 57 mils to 90 mils. I just don't think there's an appetite for any other tax increases. That promise he's making is just not going to happen when you look at the numbers. Now, a couple things he said. They're going way back. A mobile home is up to code restrictions. You can live in that. That's a home. RVs, you're not allowed to. They're not up to code standards for a home. That's the big change there. I just wanted to bring that up.
So we were actually getting a little close on time. I think we got time for one more question.
Got two ladies back here.
I think I can make room for two.
I would say this: try to one question and straight to the point, if you could, in the interest of time.
A couple of years ago, the county council raised taxes. I'm Rhonda Billingsley from Punkintown. A couple of years ago, the council raised property taxes by 10 mils. That's a lot. Usually it's only about 3 or 4 mils. Alex, you sort of touched on why you didn't. Could you sort of explain it a little bit, expound on that? And Justin, what would you have done different, or would you have agreed to that?
Okay, let's give you the history on that. The county in 2003 instituted a $20 per car fee for roads. Now, a few years ago, the courts in South Carolina said a road fee was illegal. So, county decided we're going to make a swap, a revenue neutral swap. We're going to dump the $20 road fee for 3.8 mils in property tax to give us the same $0.23 million for roads. Well, the county administration said, well, that's all well and good, but we need $5 million a year for roads. We have 65 miles of county roads. Councilmen like Henry Wilson argued for a big tax increase to take care of it at once. I was arguing, let's look at the existing budget. Let's look at new revenue. We'll get to the $5 million annual revenue over 2 to 3 years. Now, my proposal, and I had a plan here. I always have an alternative. My proposal was to take $1 million out of saving every year and put it for the next 5 years and put it into the road fund. There's $25 million in savings. The cities, I urge them to stop the recent practice of giving cities $650,000 of county road money for city-owned roads. And that's what's crazy. Why are they giving county money to cities? Cities have their own money. Okay, new revenue is coming in, lots of it. I said take $500,000 of new revenue every year and put it towards roads. Just those three things alone would have got us from $2.3 million a year up to $4 million in 1 year. I had 8 other ideas which would have got us to the $5 million. Now, the county council, they didn't like that idea. They rejected it. They passed the one-fills tax increase at one time. And at third reading, they went from 3.8 mils to 10 mils without public notice. Another reason I voted on it. But I like my budget manager approach. You get there, take time. It was a record tax hike by a Republican county council that made all sorts of conservative promises. We're fiscal conservatives. First thing they did is have a record tax increase. It was false advertising. I didn't want to do it. Inflation was already eating at individual wallets. I didn't support it. It was not 10 mils for the entire general fund in 30 departments like you typically do. It was for one department, 10 mils. They have so much money for road money now. They're using county money. They just paved the state road, spending money in ways that they shouldn't. State road at Island Road. That section's a state road. The county chairman confirmed to me they're paving city-owned roads with this county money. The county transportation the committee gives us, the county, $1.6 million a year for county roads. The county forfeited and gave it to the cities because they have so much money. Now, the biggest reason I voted no on it was because the state limited the property tax increase to 5.3 mils. The council raised it 10 mils. They created a scheme to get around the cap that has never been done before. I saw it very legally risky. Just like with the road fee, they wake up in a few years and say, the judge says, you illegally breached the cap. Then what's going to happen? Okay.
County council for years and years has kicked the can down the road and said, well, we're going to, we'll deal with it later. We'll deal with it at some point. And our roads have just crumbled around us. Right. Tax hikes should be the ultimate last resort. Okay. I'm also not going to be dumb enough to sit here and pull the George H.W. Bush trick of read my lips, no new taxes, okay? Because if there's something that makes sense and we can get a good return on investment from, then, I'll consider it, okay? Taxes are an unfortunate fact of life. I don't like them, but unfortunately they do exist. They should be as low as they possibly could be. We should cut everything from the budget that we possibly can that is not essential if we end up having to go towards a tax increase. But am I going to be the guy who just sits here and says, hey, let's increase taxes because I want to do this, I want to do that, I want to do the other? Absolutely not. So again, cut the budget, look at areas where we can where we can improve our spending habits already, and look at tax hikes as a last resort. My opponent said that he's always got an alternative. I haven't heard very many of them, and I guess the alternatives that you do have landed like a lead balloon because you haven't been able to get any of them passed, and that's sad. It really is sad. I believe that I'm being civil, and I believe that it's important to point out where I would differ and what the differences are. The differences are that I would get things done. I would get things accomplished, and I would look for every avenue to be able to get our roads fixed, not kick the can down the road. We went from a 75-year plan to fix our county roads to a 20-year plan to fix our county roads. Now, I'm not saying I would have voted for the 10 mil hike, but there is some sort of return on investment. You can't deny that. You're not going to be driving on potholes and patches for the next 75 years. You'll be driving on them for the next 20, okay? But hopefully 20 years from now, we'll be looking at having roads that you're not taking a risk of running off the road because you hit a hole going a little bit too fast. Okay, that's my position on it. I am not a tax guy, but I do believe that we need to work together to get things done.
And the last question.
Hi, I'm Laura Henty in District 4, but I do have a question about Highway 11, and I think I know where Alex stands on this, so sorry if it's repetitive. But it sounds like at least one of you wants to repeal the protections on Highway 11. Do you want to repeal the Highway 11 protections? And if so, what would you repeal or change?
Do I want to repeal the protections on Highway 11? I don't want to repeal the protections that would keep apartment complexes, corporations from moving in. No, I don't want to do that. Okay. I do want to take a strong look at what we're doing to people who have several acres of property that they would like to pass down to their children, and who either can't because they couldn't build on it. It'd be, outside of the restriction on the 2-acre lot, or they would end up having to pay way more money than they could afford to make it look like a tree. Those are all things that we do need to take a look at. We need to know that if you buy 10 acres of property up near Highway 11, and you have 5 kids, and you want to live on 2 of those acres, then you could still pass some of that property down to each one of your children, and they'd still be able to put a home on there, without having to live in fear of code enforcement or the county council coming along and telling them, sorry, because you'd have to be building on an acre and a quarter or an acre and a half. You can't do it. We're not going to allow it. Then that property that you own is completely irrelevant. You don't have it. Or you might as well not have it because it's just sitting there, right? You can't do anything with it. Developments are considered 10 plus homes on a lot. That's what the Development Standards Ordinance defines as a development. Okay. So if you're building less than 10 homes, and I don't know many people who have 10 plus kids. So if you're building less than 10 homes, then you should be able to make your home look the way you want it to without having to make it look like a tree. And you shouldn't have to drive the cost of your housing up by having to apply for permits and pay fees to make sure that the county gets what the county wants.
It's not my ordinance, but I'll explain that part. What that Highway 11 ordinance says about 10 homes is that subdivisions are limited to 10 homes in size, not individual homes. He's kind of confused on that. Okay, I want to talk about growth in general, and I'll get to your point. We're getting sprawl in 2 forms. First, it's coming from Greenville. First, it went east to Greer, went south to Simpsonville. The sprawl then went north to TR. Now it's coming west out to Greenville. People are migrating out here to cheaper houses. The second sprawl we're getting is from other states. Blue states, once COVID-restricted states. Urban areas are moving to rural areas. The Northeast is dying. People are coming down here. Now, the problem with this sprawl is it's combining with 2 things. With developers who are like abandoned gypsies, who just want to put as many houses as they can on an acre, make their money and leave. With politicians who want the money. Those 2 things are colliding in one, and you can see that easily. Now, working together, they're like locusts going over a green field. I've seen it up in New York, and it's starting to happen here. So I've been opposed to it. I've always been on the side of protecting the quality of life of the people that are here now, not the here today, gone tomorrow developers, not the money-hungry politicians, not the person who may or may not move here. The problem you've got is that, well, let's really talk about what steps I've taken to actually slow the growth. I consistently voted for larger lot sizes. So for subdivisions only, above 183 for the most part, it's 1 acre minimum per house or 2 acre minimum per house. Now, an individual home, you want to build a home, your family wants to build a home, there's no restriction on that. what we just did. Now, I voted no to giving tax breaks to residential developers who will bring more people here and then not pay their fair share of taxes when they're using services like everyone else. I voted against that. And again, my Highway 11 plan is very clear. And I'll just repeat it one more time. Plus or minus 1,000 feet from the center line. No new manufacturing, no new commercial, no new subdivisions, individual homes, no restrictions. It's going to grandfather all existing structures.
Yeah.
No. The way the Highway 11 ordinance is written now, they control the look of things. I don't know if it's your house, but surely businesses, surely in the industry. I mean, like I said, I didn't write it. I didn't vote for it. Surely industry and commercial, they control the look of things. So that Dollar General's got to look like a tree. Under my plan, the Dollar General doesn't go to Highway 11. It's not allowed. It doesn't get a permit in that 1,000 feet off the road. I hope that answers that.
Thank you. So now it's time for our closing remarks. Each of you will have 2 minutes each to give your closing remarks. And I think Alex had the preference to go first, so we'll let him go first.
Okay, the criticism that I don't have alternative plans. You heard 3 subjects tonight. My plans are crystal clear and they've got depth. You heard it on Highway 11, which I won't repeat. You heard it on EMS, building those 2 new stations, building another station for Medic 1. The road plan alternative I had, which was a funding plan. How do we get to the $5 million without raising your taxes? I had a 2-year plan to get there. Now, I want to talk about some of my accomplishments because I was criticized for that. One of the first things I did when I ran 4 years ago, you remember the recycle centers were closed on Wednesday? Everybody hated that, right? They closed in the middle of the week. Now, I ran on that issue. I made it a public issue. They opened the recycle centers just from that public pressure alone. They closed them, and about a year later, they reopened. Now, litter control is a big issue. I researched Greenville County had 6 litter control officers. Anderson had 3. Oconee had 2. We had 0. Years ago, County Council allocated money for litter control officers, but the sheriff later changed them to other functions, so they were no longer litter control officers. So when we asked them to reinstate them, they said no. So what we did, I made a motion along with Henry Wilson. We hired 2 new litter control officers, and that we now have a 3rd. So I would say I was involved in that. Now, the bigger issue was broadband. You remember 4 years ago, COVID came, and it became an essential utility. I was knocking doors, and everybody wanted it. And Blue Ridge announced the plan. They were going to get into the broadband business, and they were going to put Pickens on year 3 of the 5-year plan. 2 things were done to get Pickens at the front. One, the county council passed an ordinance to give $1.6 million tax cut to Blue Ridge for its network it was building in return for $10 million investment by Blue Ridge immediately to connect all the county buildings. And as they were connected, and they were connecting everybody in between. This moved up the process because you have a recycle center up on Highway 11. You got EMS stations up there. So they started running the lines. Then the vineyards, they stepped up. $2,500 per lot. They raised $1.2 million, brought it to Blue Ridge, built a substation in Holly Springs. First thing I had something to do with, the second thing I had nothing to do with. So what happened was they built that substation, and then they built a substation at Tally Bridge. Since they were up there, they built one at Griffin. They then built one at A.R. Lewis. Now, Northern Pickens is lit up by internet in year 3 when they were just going to start it before in year 3. The final thing is the minimum lot sizes I talked about. That was huge. Before, the minimum lot size in some places was as many as like 6 or 7 homes per lot, per acre rather. Now, above 183, which is what most people want to protect, it's anywhere from 1 acre minimum per home to 2 acre minimum per home. So that should help Highway 11. But again, on Highway 11, you're allowed commercial, and you're also allowed industrial along the shoulder, and I think that needs to change. Thanks.
So we've talked about property rights a lot. All right. We've talked about EMS. We've talked about multiple different things. We talked about roads. Again, whenever it comes election season, my opponent talks about the pop-up politicians who like to talk about, what they're going to get done, what they've accomplished. And, quite honestly, that's what I'm hearing a lot from my own councilman. I live in District 3, and that's the reason why I'm running, is because I hear plans at election time. I hear the word plan over and over and over again, but I don't see results coming across. We got okay, so out of 4 years of county council, we got a couple of litter control officers. The landfills are now open on Wednesdays, and in his very first council meeting, January 19th of 2021, after he took office, he voted on the third reading, the final reading of the broadband internet proposal. It had already been worked on for months and months and months by the rest of the county council, and then he votes on it on the third reading, in his very first council session. Now, look, I support a lot of things right now going through the campaign, but if it gets accomplished before I take office, or if it gets accomplished on the very first meeting of my county council career, if I'm elected, I don't have a ton of leg to stand on to be able to say that I was the one who got that accomplished. So again, when I decided to run, I saw a dearth in leadership. I didn't see a lot getting done for District 3. I decided to run because he voted against Highway 183 getting fixed. We needed somebody who was going down to the state legislature and working with Davey Hyatt, working with Senator Rice, working with the other members of the delegation to get that project brought on into Pickens, brought on up to Highway 8. We didn't have that in District 3. That was a big reason why I decided to run, because I drove it every day at that point, and it's a dangerous road. But there was no appetite from our District 3 leadership to get that done. And so now they're on, the flats there beside BJ's. You've still got all that area right there where it's one big patch, one big pothole, and you have to drive over it. Go to my Facebook page and look at the video. It's right there. Me and my brother drove it. We got to get something done. We've got to get things accomplished. The proof's in the pudding. I can stand outside this building all day long if it's on fire and say, hey, that's on fire. But if I don't pick up a phone and dial 911, if I don't pick up a hose and try to put it out, then I've done absolutely nothing to further the cause. So that's what I want to do if I get elected.
Thank you. Thank you both, gentlemen, for taking the time tonight to come out and offering yourself to serve. Yeah, give them a hand. I think it's safe to say there's maybe a few disagreements on a few issues, but regardless, one of you will be our next councilman here in District 3. So thank you for your willingness to serve, and Mr. Seda for your service so far. Again, thank you to each and every one of you for coming out tonight. I've got some homework for you. Voter turnout is incredibly low in primaries. So talk to 10 people, encourage them to vote, whether in this district or another district. We need more people voting because too many people sit on the sidelines and they go on Facebook and complain. As I mentioned before, we have some refreshments, drinks, a little donation basket for our club. If you feel so inclined to give us a little bit of money, it will go a long ways. Also have that sign-up sheet in the back for our email list, and I hope to see you all again very soon. Thank you.